Good evening, my name is Toby Lepati Mesme and you are tuning in at 7 PM on Friday evening, the 8th of January 2021 to today's episode of MesmePolitics, bringing you all the latest in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. Thank you for joining me. Come get involved in the chat. Come say hello. We're with you until 7:30. This is live radio, so at any point, whatever you're thinking about the various topics we'll cover today, please get in touch. Open a dialogue. You've got something to say, some hard-hitting hot takes, some controversial opinions. Come on. Nothing's off bounds. Come and have a go. Why not? Is that the George Galloway strapline? Come in if you think you're hard enough. Some talk show somewhere does that. Sort of wish I'd thought of that. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. To get a phone rigged up in here and you can just ring me and shout at me. Anyway, on today's show, why Donald Trump should be prosecuted for inciting violence and for attempting to derail the democratic process, and all your other updates on impeachment, on the 25th Amendment, and on the assortment of shit shows currently transpiring in the US. I also want to talk to you about Labour's full fibre-free broadband policy, the dire state of things regarding broadband rollout in the UK right now, the government's targets, and just the general argument battleground for the left there. But first, at the top of the hour and the start of the show, I want to detail to you the dire state of things regarding coronavirus in the UK. I thought we'd get this off straight off the bat. We can end on a positive note, nattering about broadband, bit of insurrection in the middle. Let's start with the really glum stuff. Someone says sounds like something off LBC. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Talk radio. Don't listen to talk radio, please. LBC's bad. Talk radio is like living in the pits. The UK has announced its highest daily number of COVID-related deaths of the pandemic, with 1,325 fatalities. Government figures also show the UK recorded 68,053 new coronavirus cases, the highest daily total of the pandemic so far. It is important to note that this is the highest number of deaths reported in a single day, but deaths can occur days or weeks before they are announced. If we look at the number of deaths that actually occurred in a single day, these were much higher during the first peak of the pandemic. The latest death figures continue to be affected by a lag in the publication of some recent data and contain some deaths from over the Christmas and New Year period that have only just been reported. Responding to the announcement, a spokesperson for Public Health England said that we can expect the death toll to continue to rise until we stop the spread. 4 in 10 adults formed a bubble to celebrate Christmas Day. A major incident has been declared in London. 35% more people in hospital than at the peak of the pandemic last time, over 7,000 across the UK. And approximately 1 in 3 people who have coronavirus have no symptoms and could be spreading it without realising. That's the line from Dr. William Welfare, who's a director for the COVID-19 response at Public Health England. And just to underscore all this, let's hear what NHS Chief Simon Stevens has to say about the overwhelming strain being placed on the NHS.
We've got 50% more coronavirus inpatients in our hospitals now than we had at the peak of the April 1st wave, and that is true in every region in the country now, more COVID inpatients than back in April. And that number is accelerating very, very rapidly. We've seen an increase of 10,000 hospitalised coronavirus patients just since Christmas Day. That's the equivalent of filling 20 acute hospitals with extra coronavirus patients. And of course, many of those will be patients who caught the infection between Christmas and New Year, given the delay between catching infection and becoming seriously ill. And that is, of course, all happening at what is traditionally the busiest time of year for hospitals and the wider NHS. And so whereas in April, for every one coronavirus inpatient, we were looking after 2 other hospitalised patients for other conditions, now for every one coronavirus inpatient, we're looking after 3 other patients for other conditions. So the pressures are real and they are growing. And that is why, as the Prime Minister says, I think the message from nurses, from paramedics, from intensive care staff, from GPs, from pharmacists, from everybody in the NHS is that it is vital that we do all take the steps necessary to control the growth of infection.
Absolutely dire scenes in the NHS across the country, without a doubt, in the most peril it's been at any point since the beginning of this pandemic. I think pretty much everyone would say so. Please, I implore you, don't become numb to these figures. These are thousands of deaths of our fellow citizens, of our fellow residents of the UK, of our fellow human beings, every single day. The measure of it at the moment is incomprehensible. You know, we really can't put that in proportion in our brains. It's staggering. Keep the focus on the myriad failings that have got us to this point. Keep the focus on the people whose profiteering, whose incompetence, whose rigid adherence to economic dogma have allowed us to get to the position where the economy's in the state it is, the deficit is as high as it is, and we still have this number of deaths. We're in a second lockdown. We have had the worst of all worlds, worst economic contraction, worst health catastrophe. We have not traded off one or the other. We've had neither. And the countries that dealt with public health effectively have had strong economic rebounds, even experienced growth in 2020. Absolutely staggering where we are. Keep the focus on the people who are responsible for that and should be held responsible for that, because much of this is nothing short of criminal negligence, grift, and yes, it's a big word, corruption. We appear to have the worst case rate around the world per capita right now. Obviously, people can pick apart that in various different ways, frame it in different ways, but the fact that we're anywhere even close to that is, staggering. Absolutely staggering. Britain had a reputation of a country that was well governed. We're clearly not a country that is well governed. A hollowed out health infrastructure, lack of boots on the ground to deal with any of this. All of this illustrates the severe damage, the damage that has cost so many people their lives throughout this, wreaked by austerity on the fabric of our public services. All these decisions over time, marketisation in the NHS, fragmentation of various public health services, underfunding, they have all drastic cutbacks in local government. They've all contributed to this, and on top of that, we've had a rigid cabinet of ideologues unable to match the moment, and who refuse to do anything that might help, but would go against the free market ideology to which they are signed up. We've missed the window for zero COVID. In all seriousness, we appear to have missed the window for, we have. Have you seen the cases we've got? We had a window in summer. I've seen various people talking about this, and I agree. We had a window in the summer where cases were so low we could have really pushed, got zero COVID, and we'd all be going to football matches right now. Thing is, we didn't do that. We let it spiral out how it has. We let it spread through the population. We let it mutate. Now there's a strain with our name on it. There's a South African strain coming in that might get through the defences of vaccines pending scientific research. Obviously, we don't know yet. Hope to God that is not the case. And we have, a botched government response to this whole thing. The public don't know that, really. It's not been put out by any journalists. Journalists aren't holding people to account. Aside from a few fringe voices, we've not really heard much serious analysis of zero COVID as a strategy, or the the simple fact, which I've heard Keir Starmer saying recently, and is absolutely right, that it did not just a slogan, it did not have to be this way. In no way. Britain, such a wealthy country, so many resources, so much expertise. It did not have to be this way. In any way, shape or form. Right? Nations with a fraction of our GDP have done brilliantly throughout this. Why have they done that? Well, because they value public health, and because they listen to scientists, and because they did what was necessary to get this thing under control. We are led by people who have no idea what they're doing, and we're lectured to and basically propagandized by a pundit class who have the degree of political literacy I'd expect of a 5-year-old, basically. We have to double down on this lockdown. We really have to really try and get the R rate down, even if that means making it even tougher, which of course none of us want to see. And when we've done that, and we have to do this, they've not done this in the first lockdown, not done it in the second lockdown, they must do it in this lockdown. Get in place the public health infrastructure. Get in place a functioning test, trace, isolate system. Let the public health officials at the local level deal with it. Democratise decision making in the thing. Get a system on board. Support for people isolating. Maybe isolation centres, similar to what we saw in Korea. Just do something, right? Do all these things. Fire everything at the wall and see what sticks. And try and get a zero COVID strategy. If things sort of teeter off a bit more in the summer, fight like hell to get a zero COVID strategy in place. If we don't want to spend winter 2021, winter 2022 in lockdown, because we will, even with vaccinations. Mass vaccinations are the hope, right? They're the panacea. They are the hope to get out of this mess. But don't bank on them as the catch-all solution. Because it's complicated, it takes time, there will be various problems that will have to be ironed out. If you've got the opportunity to get the vaccine, please do. It is absolutely safe. It is a remarkable feat of human ingenuity and science. However, it is not going to solve all our problems overnight. We have to acknowledge, we have to focus on things like a zero COVID strategy, because the vaccination is not going to fix everything this year like that. Not going to happen. Especially after these new strains came in. Before that, it looked like there was a possibility that could happen. It doesn't look like that. Chris Whitty's already talking about, restrictions over Christmas 2021. That's where we're at right now. And that's basically the line. There are ways this can be dealt with, but the people in power don't seem to want to utilise them, which is bizarre. Anyway, over to the US, and the Justice Department said on Thursday that it would not rule out pursuing charges against President Trump for his possible role in inciting the mob that marched to the Capitol, overwhelmed officers and stormed the building a day earlier. US Attorney in Washington said, that's Michael Sherwin, said, "We are looking at all actors, not only the people who went into the building." Mr. Sherwin was asked whether such targets would include Mr. Trump, who exhorted supporters during a rally near the White House, telling them that they could never take back our country with weakness. Quote, "Propelled by Mr. Trump's baseless claims of election irregularities, the protesters had gathered to demonstrate against Congress's certification of Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s Electoral College victory and moved on to the Capitol after the president's rally." Mr. Sherwin then said he stood by his statement, saying, "We're looking at all actors. If the evidence fits the elements of a crime, they're going to be charged." Should Trump be prosecuted? Well, Nancy Pelosi thinks so. She is threatening impeachment hearings.
The President of the United States incited an armed insurrection against America. The gleeful desecration of the U.S. Capitol, which is the temple of our American democracy, and the violence targeting Congress are horrors that will forever stain our nation's history, instigated by the President of the United States. That's why it's such a stain. In calling for this seditious act, the President has committed an unspeakable assault on our nation and our people. I join the Senate Democratic leader in calling on the Vice President to remove this President by immediately invoking the 25th Amendment. If the Vice President and the Cabinet do not act, the Congress may be prepared to move forward with impeachment. That is the overwhelming sentiment of my caucus.
The clock is clearly ticking. There's 13 days.
That's right.
How long are you willing to give the Cabinet and Pence until they make a
Well, I
decision
think
before
that they
you
will.
start your own procedure?
I don't think that it'll take long to get an answer from the Vice President. It'll either be yes or it will be no, and we'll see. But we want to make sure.
Today? Do you expect an answer today?
We would hope.
That's Nancy Pelosi there. Off her feet far quicker than she was for, supplying working Americans with survival checks. But nonetheless, she's right. Everything she says there is correct. Whatever my opinions of her as a politician, everything she said there is absolutely correct. And it would certainly have more validity and also political cachet than the first impeachment. Here it's an undeniable thing. It's not, if people are voting against this, they're not voting against a disputed thing. They're voting against, and they probably will, but they're voting against literal criminal incitement to insurrection. Let's hear what President Trump had to say in this 3-minute message posted to his Twitter account.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored. We must get on with the business of America. My campaign vigorously pursued every legal avenue to contest the election results. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. In so doing, I was fighting to defend American democracy. I continue to strongly believe that we must reform our election laws to verify the identity and eligibility of all voters and to ensure faith and confidence in all future elections. Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation. 2020 has been a challenging time for our people. A menacing pandemic has upended the lives of our citizens, isolated millions in their homes, damaged our economy, and claimed countless lives. Defeating this pandemic and rebuilding the greatest economy on earth will require all of us working together. It will require a renewed emphasis on the civic values of patriotism, faith, charity, community, and family. We must revitalize the sacred bonds of love and loyalty that bind us together as one national family. To the citizens of our country, serving as your president has been the honor of my lifetime. And to all of my wonderful supporters, I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Oh, God, I hate him. I really, really hate him. He has now, by the way, said he will not be attending Joe Biden's inauguration. So another sort of punch to the nuts for the peaceful transfer of power. Yay. The 25th Amendment similarly ruled out now. Pence doesn't want to do it. Various people have gone from the cabinet. Cowards. It's not going to happen, basically. The 25th Amendment isn't going to happen. We're not going to have a sort of transfer of power orchestrated by acting President Pence, which would probably be the best thing for just the safety of all our lives and the likelihood of an incoming nuclear attack because Trump's French fries took too long to arrive. A fast impeachment proceeding is now what should happen. Just immediately see it rush through the House. It'll pass the House, go to the Senate. It's unlikely 20 Republicans will cross lines. You'd hope they would. They won't. Maybe 5 maximum. But we have to try something. We have to try and stop. This is, the first impeachment was basically a score settling by the national security establishment. This time, this is this is insurrection. We have to do something to incentivize that if another Trump makes it into the White House, another Trump-like figure, that they can't do this. There are consequences. Trump is looking at pardoning himself. He has been for a while. Almost certainly will now. I don't know how that can be stopped. Impeachment or being deposed by the 25th Amendment, neither of which are now going to happen. He's saving face. He's clearly absolutely terrified of going to jail. The danger he's put everyone in, the dereliction of duty of so many people involved. He is a risk in the next week or two. As president, it's unclear what he will do. He could do anything. He has the nuclear codes, but he's deemed unsafe to be on Facebook, basically. Complete dereliction of duty from all those around him. Good riddance to Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, who's gone. Good riddance to bad rubbish. She was an education secretary who didn't believe in public education, ignored teachers' unions, ignored scientists, and basically put millions of American families at risk and contributed to causing deaths, all while being a fierce cheerleader till the very last minute for the Trump administration. We look forward to seeing what cushy, highly paid private sector job she takes on now. Trump has to be prosecuted, be it at a federal level, a local level, a state level. What happens if it happens before, after, during? It just has to be done. We have to. Everyone has to realise if we don't set some sort of precedent here, we've demonstrated you can do whatever you want. You have some money, become president, act with impunity, nearly bring about the collapse of American democracy. It cannot stand. And people have to fight it. People have to stand up and fight it. The Biden Justice Department must take action, because boy, there's enough material to take action without being even remotely politically interfered with. I think the political interference isn't going to be Biden egging them on to get Trump. It's going to be Biden asking them not to get Trump. Let them do what they need to do, including prosecuting Trump, if that's where the facts lead them. Don't treat him with kid gloves because he's a former president. This is the 21st century. We don't treat people with kid gloves because of a certain role they've had. Well, we don't want to, of course we do, but let's keep the delusion alive a little bit longer. Now, on to the final story of the day. Boris Johnson's promise to deliver nationwide turbocharged broadband by 2025 will be missed because of a catalogue of government failures, Parliament's spending watchdog has concluded. In a timely report released on Friday, as many children struggle to gain access to remote learning during lockdown, the Public Accounts Committee has criticised the Department for Digital, Media, Culture, Sport, DCMS, for failing to make any meaningful progress in delivering policies or legal changes to achieve a rapid rollout of gigabit broadband. Johnson first proposed this target as he stood to be leader of the party, saying, "If we want to unite our country and our society, we should commit now to delivering full fibre to every home in the land, not in the mid-2030s, but in 5 years at the outside." In the 2019 election, the Conservatives pledged to roll out gigabit broadband connectivity across the entire country by 2025. But in November 2020, the government rode back on the target and said it was aiming for 85% instead. There are still serious doubts. Even 85% can be met in 5 years, a delay that could leave businesses and homes struggling with slow broadband. The Labour MP Meg Hillier says due to a litany of planning and implementation failures at DCMS, that's chair of the Public Accounts Committee, Meg Hillier, those promises are slipping further and further out of reach. Even worse news for the rural excluded, who face years trying to recover with substandard internet connectivity. Government cannot allow digital inequality to continue to compound and exacerbate the economic inequality that has been so harshly exposed in the COVID-19 pandemic. If only there was a policy for that. If only there was an idea that was trashed by much of the pundit class, the political establishment, and viewed as not a conceivable thing. Something that you like, but something you didn't believe would be delivered by most voters in the last election. It was supported. People just didn't think it was a real policy. People thought it was plucked out of the air. The actual fact is, it was a very well thought out, modern, transformative policy, and something Labour should commit itself to. Should we remind ourselves?
A taste of the kind of fresh, transformational policies that will change your life. So here it is. A Labour government will make broadband free for everybody. And not just any broadband, but the very fastest full fibre broadband to every home in every part of our country for free as a universal public service. And once it's up and running, instead of you forking out your monthly bill, we'll tax the giant corporations fairly. I hope they're listening to this. We're going to tax you fairly. That includes Facebook and Google. That will help to cover the running costs of this. This is a policy for the many. Making broadband free and available to all will open up opportunities for everybody. What was once a luxury is now an essential utility. That's why full fibre broadband must be a public service, bring communities together with equal access in an inclusive and connected society. Fast and free broadband for all will fire up our economy, deliver a massive boost to productivity, and bring 500,000 people back into the workforce. It will help our environmental issues and tackle the climate emergency by reducing the need for commuter journeys. And it will make our country fairer, more equal, and more democratic.
Well, once again, he was proven right. An excellent policy from John McDonnell. Looking back on it now, it was seriously considered. They went out, they talked to people, all the various stakeholders, and it turns out, people don't think about it much, this is actually, it's up there with opening the libraries, originally in the 19th century, or opening up the... it's up there with whatever basic utilities we rely on now. Better transport links. You also need better connectivity links. Particularly, this crisis has really laid it bare in terms of children at home, many of them unable, particularly in deprived areas, unable to access the connectivity they need. But in general, this in modern Britain, this would be a boon for small businesses, for people working, for people educating, for the many, and it would annoy very few people at the top of large tech companies. This is not government control of the internet. This is a modern policy that would bring Britain into the 21st century. It's being discussed, on out and about by various people. Owen Jones in The Guardian has just written a piece about why that policy was right. Various left-wing Labour MPs have basically gone, well, that was right, wasn't it? They are right. This is right. This policy was obviously ahead of its time, but it's now come into its time. It would modernise the communications, education's working infrastructure of Britain on a truly transformative scale. It would be paid back for in economic growth, in productivity, and in general quality of life increase for so many people right across this country. Because it's not just people who can't get it, it's people who can't afford it, can't get the right speed, can't get it set up. All of this would have been taken care of. Ideology is holding us back on policies like this. It's been ingrained in us to think, oh, this is a handout, this is free stuff. No, it's not. This is a public utility. We used to have a lot of them. We're not handing out free state-sewn suits. This is the fact people couldn't, it was called broadband communism. It really does stagger me that, it takes maybe 5 seconds until you see how this is actually a very good idea. Fully being held back by ideology. We're behind so many countries on things like this. Labour should make the case for it. They're saying welcome things, immediate short-term fixes, but they should lay out all the problems we're facing regarding this deficit, equality deficit in connectivity, lay out how this would make a real, clear difference to people's lives, working people's lives, make the case for it over the next few years, because one of the reasons it wasn't accepted by the public is because it was thrown out of the blue. People hadn't really heard about it in public from Labour before, even though many of the ideas behind it are ideas that Labour had got from talking to people. So I think what they need to do is they need to announce this policy, they need to talk about it, and they need to make the case, organise around it, talk about it for 4 years. The case will have been made, it'll have cut through the noise, and people will understand the policy, and it won't just be, what, they're now giving out free broadband? No, actually, let's make the case, let's understand what it's about. And once you do that, people are very sensible, and you think about it for 5 seconds away from the slanderous headlines. This is something we need. I think 4 years is enough time to make that happen. These things are essential. There's no argument. There's no argument about it. And if you're going to tell me it's not essential, I would bet that you are probably lucky enough to have good internet, or indeed, you've taken a lot of things for granted. Think about the things that you've taken for granted over time. And of course, there are many things that are, quote unquote, higher priorities. Fine. But this is up there. We're not saying we won't fix the bus links. Instead, you'll get your free broadband. We're talking about this as a package of a transformative programme for Britain. I think that's right. Every single day, live. I have to apologise, just around the end of the show. Ironically, really ironically, because we're talking about broadband, we are having some connectivity issues. I kid you not, first time in the entire course of doing this show that we've had any connectivity issues. And the moment, for the first time ever on this show, I'm talking about broadband, we're having issues with the broadband. And I really do ask you, if you're sceptical about this, I want you to think about, all the things you take for granted. Some people can't utilise, and how people's lives could be enriched by treating it like water, like transport, as a public utility. Because clearly the model we have at the moment isn't working. We wouldn't be making any fuss if it was. You've had your try. I think that's how it's got to be. Okay, you can get in touch with me on Twitter at TobyJoshuaUK. You can get my articles on Medium at TobyJoshuaPolitics. Or you can email me, TobyJoshua2004@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Have a lovely rest of your Friday and have a wonderful sat in lockdown.